First, just a little bit about myself. I've been working in the cloud industry for a while now. Started my career at PayPal, moved on to Amazon, got to see kind of the differences in how they built apps, which was really interesting. But I really wanted the startup experience that everybody comes to Silicon Valley for, and I stumbled upon this crazy little company called Heroku that was doing, at the time was called Platform as a Service for Ruby apps. And I had built a Rails app for a failed startup. And so it was this weird person who could make spreadsheets, code in Ruby, and maybe think about what products people should build. So I became a product manager in the first dozen or so people at Heroku. Had a great run there. It was a ton of fun. Managed and started the Heroku Postgres product, which maybe some of you have used, and for a while PM'd the main Heroku product. Then I left there, did a couple things, spent a couple years at Docker, and then I found my way over to Google Cloud. And so now I'm PMing the App Engine product, which is actually Google Cloud's oldest product. It predates Google Cloud, and it kind of had been the janky old product in the portfolio, but in the last couple years, we've been reinvesting in it, and now it's the really cool vintage product in the Google portfolio. So hope you folks will be excited about it and give it a try. So you can post your questions on Dory, and I'll take a look at them at the end. I think you can link to it from the next app. I don't know. If not, you can use this ugly URL here. Okay, so what we're going to cover today. First, I'm going to talk about just what are your options for Ruby on Google Cloud. Then I'm going to show you a basic app. Basically, this is an app, Heroku circa 2013 or so. Rails, Postgres, and Redis running on in a single location. Then we're going to do something that, frankly, I've always wanted to do, which is build a app that spans multiple continents and geo-routes to them based on where you are and is resilient to an entire continent going down. It's ICBM proof, as I like to say. Okay, so first of all, if you take one thing away from this, it's this. Ruby is now on App Engine in a really big way. We announced that yesterday in the big mega blog post about serverless. We got a whole paragraph of mention. It is in alpha. I can say it has a couple rough edges, but it's actually pretty good for an alpha product. I've been really banging on it hard, and it works, which is great. So I will show a URL at the end for how you folks can use it. It is a private alpha, but all you have to do is join a Google group, and it'll magically work for you. Okay, so let's talk about your Ruby options on Google Cloud. Before, there was basically only one option, which was App Engine Flex. And for those of you who might not be familiar with App Engine, there's basically two flavors, two environments. There's Flex and Standard. It's kind of environment's a bit of a misnomer. They're basically completely different products, completely different code bases, different user interfaces. App Engine Flex used to be called Managed Virtual Machines. And that's what it is. It's basically like a serverless-like experience on virtual machines. So scaling it out, takes like 10 minutes because you got to wait for the virtual machine to load. Deploys take a while. It abstracts some things away, but it's not really serverless because there's servers there. So the choices were kind of barren. But now, oh my gosh, we still have App Engine Flex, but now we've got App Engine Standard, a second-generation runtime. We've got Cloud Run, which is just announced. You can just create a container. It can have Ruby in it. Cloud Run doesn't care what's in the container, and it works. Or you can do Cloud Run on GKE, where you take that container and run it on your own private GKE cluster. So lots of choices. They all work pretty well. It's a lot of fun. Now I want to go. Oh. Okay, here we go. So again, take a quick picture of this if you want to try it. This is a super ugly URL. App Engine-Standard-Ruby25-Alpha Google group. You'll go to the Google groups, log in with your Google account, the same one you use on Google Cloud, join the group. It's set to just auto-accept anybody who joins, and that puts you into the alpha. And there'll be a link there to docs on how you use it, but we'll be showing you that today. It's pretty straightforward. Here's that Dory link again, if anybody has questions. You can also ask questions live, but this is, if you're shy and don't want to get up and talk, you can just put it in on your app and do a question there. All right, so I want to show you a simple Ruby app, but actually let's take a detour and talk about why Ruby. I'm actually curious, like most of the people here are Rubyists. If you just want to shout out, like why do you program in Ruby? Anybody?
Easy.
It's easy. I think it's super easy. I pride myself on being a really bad programmer, and Ruby is a language that makes a lot of sense to me. Anyone else? Why Ruby?
Rails.
What's that?
Rails. Using Rails.
Rails, yes, Rails is awesome. It's not cool. It is super not cool right now, but I think it is awesome. If you want to build a web app that's backed by a database, it's such a no-brainer. You can create a Rails app in a second. You could fire up a scaffold. Basically, with a couple of commands, you could have a working app. And I'm actually giving a talk in about an hour talking about sort of productivity with serverless. And to me, Rails and serverless go hand in hand. You can build an app in like under an hour, and you can deploy it in a couple minutes. And you can have, you can actually test out to see if it's something useful, which is great. I also think Ruby is great, and Rails too, for expressing business logic. Like having a model, you can have an invoice model. Invoice.create creates a new invoice. Invoice.send. You can create this code that is very easy to read, very business friendly, and I think it's one of the best ways to model business logic out there. And it turns out most apps have that sort of logic in it. All right, so let's talk about a simple Ruby app. We're going to use these things: App Engine, Cloud SQL, Cloud Memory Store, and VPC Connector. So let me tell you about what's changed in the Google Cloud world on why this is relevant. The janky old App Engine of a couple years ago, it was this all-in-one product. It came with data store. It came with a special flavor of Memcache that was Memcache G for Google. It was different from regular Memcache. And those services worked really well. They worked perfectly out of the box. But if you wanted to use something else, tough luck, you couldn't. You couldn't even get direct network access. You had to use a special API called URL fetch. You wanted a different library, you couldn't use it. You could only get the libraries that were on there. And the language runtimes themselves weren't even the open source ones. They were these special forks of the languages that Google maintained. So in other words, it was super proprietary. But last year we released something called second generation runtimes, which is kind of what people expect these days. It's a fully open source language runtime, has direct network access, obviously. And so that was a big step forward. But the Ruby second generation runtimes run on an entirely different cluster from the rest of Google Cloud. And they weren't able to talk to a lot of the Google Cloud services. So also yesterday, we released something called VPC Connectors. And this kind of completes the picture for using App Engine second-gen runtimes in Ruby. They let you connect to any VM or any service built on VMs, which is like Cloud SQL or Redis, that's running in Google Cloud. So now you can sort of use all the parts of Google Cloud along with your App Engine app. And that's another big takeaway that you should get is that Google Cloud has all these fun toys. AI, artificial intelligence APIs, Redis, Memcache, Spanner, all these cool things. And now with App Engine, you can actually use them, which is great. All right, so it's pretty easy. This is like the bare bones setup. In your gem file or wherever you're specifying your Ruby gem, you want to do sort of 2.5.3 or greater. It's currently running Ruby 2.5.3, and it's going to be 2.5.5 shortly. Maybe we'll go to 2.6. We'll see. App Engine has something called an app.yaml. That's where you configure it and tell it what it is you're doing. You need to tell it you're using the Ruby runtime. You tell it an instance class. There's F1, F2, and F4. The F1 is 128 megabytes of RAM, and it turns out that it's not enough RAM to run even most basic Ruby apps, so you need to do an F2. But I've got really good news, and you guys are going to be some of the first to hear it. Later this quarter, we're going to be doubling the memory on all of the second-gen instances, so you'll be able to use an F1 for the same price as the F2. That F1 will be 256 megs, which is enough for a basic Ruby app. And finally, you set something called an entry point, and this is just the command that gets run. It could be your Rails server command, or it can be a Puma command directly or whatever you want. And then on the CLI, you just type in gcloud app deploy. That's assuming you've got the gcloud client. If you don't, just install it, and boom, it should work. All right. So that would get you just like a Hello World app, but Hello World doesn't really get you very far. So you'll probably, almost all apps, we talked about Rails. Rails is great. Rails usually wants a relational database, and it really likes Postgres. That's my favorite. So to set this up, just click into the Cloud SQL part of the Google console, and you're going to fill out this form here. You give it some name, generate a password. Oh, I have all those. Whoa. Oh, yeah, okay, I didn't step through this. Okay, so yeah, you'll give it you just click that generate password button and copy that. Pick a region. You can choose to run it in the US, West, Central, or East, Europe. We got lots of regions. It's one of the really cool things about Google Cloud. And really important, and this is actually a little caveat I ran into, enable a public IP. Otherwise, it doesn't seem to work. In theory, you should be able to have a private IP and connect via the VPC Connect, but once we get that working, we'll document that properly. This is still alpha. Okay, then, one of the cool things you can do in that app YAML, this is an App Engine specific thing, is you can set environment variables. So just set that password you generated, just stick it in there, tell it what your user is, and tell it what the host is. That host, after this screen, after you actually click the create, it'll give you this host. You just put out the Cloud SQL dash. There's this sort of special Unix socket that gets created on App Engine to connect to your Cloud SQL instances, and so that's actually what it's doing. And then in your Rails app in your databases.yaml, you just reference those environment variables for setting up your database. All right, now, like I talked about before, creating a VPC connector. So by default, when you create a project in Google Cloud, you get a virtual private cloud that has all where that's where you stick VMs that are shielded from the big, bad, dangerous internet. So it's really easy. You just click into here. You're going to have to enable VPC access. For some reason, I don't get, most of the products on Google Cloud don't work by default. You have to first enable the API, then you can use them. I don't know why that is. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but it makes for awkwardness in getting started. Okay, then you're going to click into serverless VPC access and just click create a connector. Boom. You tell it which network. You get this default one by default. You're going to need to type in an IP range with a -28 sitter range. Just use the default one that's in that little help text there. And there you go. Now you're going to create a Redis instance. So again, you just click onto memory store, create it, give it a name, pick the region. You probably wanted the region to be the same one that you picked for App Engine because you want it to be nice, fast internet access. And that is basically all you want. You can choose, there's basic and standard tiers. The standard tiers have failover, but we don't need that for our demo. And then we're going to configure the app to use Redis. That's all. You just stick that in your production config, tell it to use that, and you see we're using that Redis URL, which I had back here so back in that app YAML, we also see that VPC access connector. You have to put that in to make the VPC work, and then you stick in that Redis URL at the very bottom there, and that's the address of the Redis instance you just created. And then it will all work. All right, so I'm not going to actually go through all that live because it's takes like 15 minutes, but we can just pull up a working app, prove that it's working. Okay, could I get there we go, cool. So I created this app. I'll pull it up here. Let's make this not terribly small. So here's this app. It's just a simple app with 2 models, and So here's that app YAML that I was showing you before. This is all the live stuff. I guess it has my credentials in it. I'll have to destroy this database now. Otherwise, heaven forbid, you could put data in there. So that's the basic app, and boom, it is running right here. You can see you get this little appspot.com domain. This is an app. It tracks watches because I've been collecting watches lately, and it's kind of a fun thing to put in a database. And you can put in a URL, and it works. And that is a Rails app running on App Engine. For some reason, it's been super slow. You can see it's loading up right now. I have no idea why that is, but again, it's alpha, so it's slow. And man, that is really painful, really painful. All right, well, it's not supposed to work that way, but the demo gods are not looking favorably on us. All right, so let's switch back into the presentation. Okay, again, put some questions in Dory. All right, now let's get to the fun part. So let's look at a world-spanning Ruby app. Now, I think when at least for me, when I first got interested in cloud computing, this is kind of what I wanted. I wanted a cloud that spanned the world. And I've talked to lots of customers of Heroku and Google Cloud and Docker, and there's, I'd say 1 out of 5, maybe 1 out of 2 times, people are like, when they say, well, can you run it in different places? Yes. Can I run it in all those places at once? No. It's something that's really hard to do, but it's kind of something that people want, right? You know, it's the cloud. It's not located anywhere, right? It's just kind of ephemeral. So you want a cloud that covers the world. But really, you end up getting this. It's like, yeah, you can put it wherever you want. Central, east, west, we've got all of them. Pick one. All right? So yeah, it's great. It's still super awesome to not have to manage all these things, not have to go down to the data center. But it's not that kind of cloud of our dreams. But it's actually possible to build. So let's build it. So this is what we're going to use for this. We're going to use the new Cloud Run on GKE product that got launched yesterday. It is super cool. If you are running Kubernetes in your organization but want to have a serverless experience, it is a smoking hot product. You should probably have, there's probably someone in your company that's like the Kubernetes operator, maybe 2 people, but then you put Cloud Run on top of it, and you don't need to worry about the Kubernetes stuff. We'll also use Spanner. So one of the hardest parts about creating an app in multiple locations is the data. It's really easy to just run something that returns hello world, and that's it. You can run that in multiple places, but who cares? Almost all apps need data, and data is heavy, and so it doesn't like to move around a lot, but we've got this really cool technology called Spanner, and we'll back it with that. You can use cloud memory, Redis, the same way that we did in the other app, and again, that VPC connector, and then to wrap it all together, we'll use CloudFlare to do the geo-routing. Well, there was a really cool map of the world there, but that's not loading for some reason. So imagine there's a app here, there's a map here. We're going to run this in US Central 1, which is in Iowa, in EU West, which is in Belgium, and in Asia. It's going to be one app, 3 continents. It's load balanced, so it'll go to whichever continent you are closest to, and it'll have automatic failover. Here's the architecture. So on the front, like I said, the hard parts about this are the load balancing and the data. Doing the app's actually pretty easy. So we'll use Cloudflare for a geo load balancer. Currently, the Google Cloud Load Balancer does not work well with Cloud Run. Hopefully, in the next, by the end of the year, that will not be the case. So you could just keep it all in the Google Cloud. But frankly, it doesn't matter. Cloudflare is a great product. It was actually one of the easier parts of this whole demo to set up. I had never used this part of Cloudflare before, but it took me under an hour from learning on how to set it up. It'll geo-balance to the code running in any one of these 3 regions. When I made this slide, I was going to try to use App Engine, but it turns out Cloud Run worked a little bit better. The reason for that, by the way, is you can only have 1 App Engine app per Google Cloud project. So that makes it hard to have an app running in 3 places. You can create multiple projects, but then those apps can't all connect to the same spanner instance because the apps connect to the spanner instance in their project. Projects are these kind of fenced bounds in Google Cloud. Then we'll have a cache layer, and then the spanner database in back. So here's some caveats. There's no ActiveRecord support for spanner. If you Google it, you will find a gem. It hasn't had an update in 2 years, so it's not based on the latest Ruby version. It's not based on the latest Rails version. It does actually work on the versions that it talks about, but it was a proof of concept. It was built by someone who used to work at Google, and it did work as a proof of concept. The Ruby team at Google is hoping to build an ActiveRecord adapter for Spanner later this year. That means that hopefully next year it'll exist. I would love it. If that does exist, doing this will become exceedingly simple because without ActiveRecord, Rails kind of isn't very friendly to use. Caveat number 2 is you're going to need to use the Google Cloud Client library, and it does not support process forking. Maybe you've delved into this, but most modern servers, they'll fork the process and get better concurrency. That will just break the gRPC library, which the Cloud Client's based on. And so you just need to set your app to not fork. If you're using Puma, there's like a simple flag to do that. And third caveat is, oh my God, it is expensive. Like, this is not for the faint of heart. It is really cool, and it's almost kind of cool how expensive it is. How expensive is it? It's about a Tesla Model 3 per month, and that's if you use the barest bone configuration, right? So the barest bone spanner configuration that runs on 3 continents is about $27,000 per month. Yeah, it's silly. It's silly expensive. The good news is, if you're a really big company, that's a spanner instance. You can have up to 100 databases on an instance. So each database is actually going to cost you about $270 a month, which is super reasonable. So if you work for a big company and they decide to use Spanner for a bunch of things, it starts to become pretty cost effective. Or if you're at really big scale, right? I mean, if you're running like the next super hot startup, $27,000 a month to have global reach is pretty reasonable. There's also a whole GKE cluster. Each cluster in each continent has 45 gigs of RAM and 3 nodes and costs another several $1,000s a month. So it's pretty pricey, but it's cool you can do it. Okay, so how do you do it? First, you have to create a Spanner client. I just created a little initializer, and this is straight out of the Spanner docs. And you can see at the very end there, the little $sign that makes it a global. And so you can just access this from anywhere in your Rails app. Then you need to populate it. The cool thing about Spanner is it's plain vanilla SQL. So this is just some plain SQL. I just created it and pasted it in on the Spanner console and created my table. The app we're going to create is just a very simple posts app that has messages. And like I said before, there's no ActiveRecord support. Fortunately, there's this thing in Rails now called Active Model, which is a lot of ActiveRecord without the database. But you just need to recreate some of the methods that ActiveRecord would otherwise give you. So what's going on here? When I was more ambitious, there was an image uploader on this app. It didn't quite work. We have the Active Model in this post class. We also have a few other things that, like these URL helpers that just make things work. Unlike an ActiveRecord app, you need to create this attribute accessor. These are just the various attributes that's in the database that lets you access them. And you can do validation. And that's the basics of creating a model. Then we just need to recreate some of the methods ActiveRecord gives you. Here's a simple finder. You pass it an ID, then it just executes this SQL where you find a post and return the first one. There should only be one, but better safe than sorry. So that would be, post.find. Then once you have one, if you want to save it, boom, you just do a transaction and insert the stuff into the database. I'm just passing in whatever got set on that model. And you could do a like find all, where you just do a select star, and you limit it to, you don't want to, if you have a lot of stuff, you don't want too many of them. So this is recreating what the methods that ActiveRecord would give you by default. Again, if we make a ActiveRecord spanner adapter, you won't need to do this, and it'll be really easy. All right, then setting up CloudFlare. So CloudFlare, you just add a site. You create these things called pods. Pods are nominally collections of servers, but since with serverless, you are getting a collection of servers, you basically just map each of these to one of your deployed instances, and then you create a load balancer, and the load balancer is just saying load balance between these pods. And you can see at the very top there, you give it a URL. In order for CloudFlare to work, you need to be doing your DNS, and it'll automatically create all the DNS magic. You can also create some health checks here to just make sure it's working. Okay, so let's switch into demo mode again. Wake up my computer. Now, the demo gods were not friendly to me, and for some reason, so here's the app. And maybe my internet's not even working. Oh wait, I see. Wrong URL. Boom. All right, so it says this app is being served from the EU. So the demo gods were not friendly to me, but it actually helped demonstrate kind of some of the power of this. For some reason, I could not get the US version of this app working. Something got borked in the configuration, but guess what? The Cloudflare geo-routing also does failover, so it's routing us to the EU version of the app. And that's basically just pulling out a config var that lets you know where it's being served from, that little message at the top. So what this looks like in Google Cloud, oh, too big. So you go into Google Cloud Console, and you tap on Cloud Run, and basically you can just create a service. Actually, let's deploy. Let's show a full deploy here. I'm going to go to my command line, and here's the directory. So here's this Hi World app. I need to switch to the project. So again, we talked about those projects. This app has its own project. All right, so now I'm going to use that project, and now I'm going to do a build. Let's just see, just pulled out of my command history here. All right, so gcloud build submit, and you give it a tag. So what this we have this other product called Cloud Build, and it takes a Docker file and builds it for you. So I just told it to build that and tag it with this. gcr.io is our container registry, and it's going to fetch this thing and pull it all up into the cloud. You can also do the build locally with Docker and then just push it up there. It actually will work faster if you build locally, because right now Cloud Build does not cache your layers in Docker. But you can see this just goes through all the regular build stuff. This is just plain vanilla Docker. Nothing special about this. That's the power of Cloud Run. Once it's built, I can create a service, and I just go into Cloud Run. Here, let's start from the beginning. I just go into Cloud Run, click Create Service, pick my container image. There we go. Give it a name. Now, when you pick a region, this is Cloud Run not on GKE. Right now it's only available in US Central, but then these are my GKE clusters that I set up before. I just pick which one I want, can deploy it to Asia, and we allow it to connect to the internet. Optional settings. You can pick how much memory each instance of this app gets. You can add any config variables you want here. So on this app, I've got a region. Click Create. And it's going to deploy. And that's all it takes to deploy something to Cloud Run. And then over here, just to show you what's happening in Cloudflare, we've got this load balancer. Is that visible? So in Cloudflare, there's this little traffic tab here. And you set up a load balancer. I've got this one. It's hosting the demo subdomain. And you can see it's got 2 pools active. Here's that US pool that wasn't working. I just turned it off because it was having problems. But now it just routes to my European pool and my Asia pool. If we take a look at one of those, this is just the default IP address that I get on Cloud Run on GKE. I just stuck that in there straight out of the console. I'll show you that. Here's that European version of the app. There's that, and I basically just copy and pasted that into here. And here we have the working Hello World app. Super small, wrong way. Hello, Cloud Next 2019. Boom. And there it is. Hello, Cloud Next. Oh, second time I made that message. Okay, it works. Cool. Being served from the EU because the US is down right now. And that's a world-spanning Ruby app. Oh, can we go back to my slides? Thank you. World-spanning Ruby app. You saw it here first. There's nothing special about Ruby. You could do this with really any Docker container. Node, Bash, whatever you want. Just needs to listen on port 80. All right, wrapping up. So I think one of the points of this talk is Google Cloud has a lot of cool building blocks. There's Spanner, there's machine learning APIs, there's all these cool things. And what's really fun is in just a couple days or a couple hours, depending on how good you are, it took me a couple days because I'm a really bad programmer, you can snap them together and create something really powerful. Second takeaway, Ruby is on the cloud in a big way. It's on all those services. So if you've been waiting to use Google Cloud but were deterred by the lack of Ruby support, it is there now. And again, to try it right now, there is the URL. Just join that Google group and you can use it today. I would love feedback. Just email me directly, soldo@google.